All right, and with that, we'll transition into the ridership forecast update, and Matt Haynes from Fair and Pierce will be presenting. Thank you very much.
Great, thank you, Riley, and good afternoon, everyone. I'm Matt Haynes with Fair and Pierce, part of the HDR project consulting team, and I'm planning to share some updates on the ridership forecasting process that's been underway with the project. Next slide. I thought I would start by sharing a little bit of background on what ridership forecasting is and why it's important for a project such as this. Some of you may have tuned in last fall when we had another webinar on the ridership forecasting process. So some of these slides are a little similar, but thought it would be helpful as a recap for getting into the updates on ridership today. So ridership forecasting is really a way of estimating travel demand for transit systems. It's so the process really looks at how many people might be riding a system, and also how many people might be getting on and off at individual stations. That's useful for the overall transportation planning process. It helps inform decisions about the overall project and some details about specific stations and other aspects of the project. Ridership forecasting is also beneficial because it accounts for different factors like population growth, economic trends, travel behavior trends, and preferences, and even fluctuations in seasonal travel demand. So next slide. There's a few steps involved in the ridership forecasting process, and without going into a lot of detail on each of the technical steps, at a high level, ridership is a form of modeling tool. Ridership forecasting is a form of modeling tool that accounts for factors like socioeconomic data, and then characteristics of the transportation system. So the kind of where roads are connected to one another, and then how transit networks such as bus and future rail networks might be connected to one another. That data and other information then goes into a tool called a forecast model, which looks at ways of how travel demand occurs, how many trips might occur. The second step, by which mode? Is it bicycling? Is it driving? Is it riding transit? And then that allows us, as part of that process, to look at specific ridership levels for the ZEPRT project. We can also then look at where trips start and where they go. And so that allows us to get more information and look at actual travel patterns for how the system might be used in the future. So that's just a brief overview of the process of ridership forecasting. Next slide. As many of you know, the forecasts build on previous studies, and there have been several studies that have been done along the corridor over the past 20 or more years. A few things to note: in 2015, the original rail transit feasibility study looked at different rail service scenarios. And then right after that, the county developed a new travel demand model, which allows, among other things, us to forecast rail ridership for this project. That model was then used in 2021 for the alternatives analysis for the corridor, and that looked at some different rail service options and types of rail service, developed some initial forecasts for the corridor. And all of that information is then used as a basis for the current work, which started in 2024 and is presenting or developing more refined ridership forecasts. Next slide. So there's maybe some questions about ridership forecasting as to how far into the future we look. And a ridership model allows us to look at different time horizons into the future. Projects, especially transit projects, often look at an opening year maybe when the system might originally open, but then also a future horizon year. So after the service has been open and operating for several years, and travel patterns have adjusted and normalized, and maybe additional regional growth has occurred, what might forecasts look like then? So the ridership forecast that I'm going to share today focus on a horizon year of about 20 years from now. So that's an approximate year around 2045, and kind of what would conditions look like if the ZEPRT project were operational, and some of the regional changes in travel patterns and transportation projects and population and employment changes have already occurred. Next slide. What was covered in the prior webinar and maybe is worth recapping today is that there's a combined approach that we've been using for the ZEPRT project that shortly it really gets to the best of both worlds, looking at the regional travel demand model that looks at has been developed for the county, looks at regional travel patterns and behavior, looks at broader factors, but then combining that with a more specific model called a direct ridership model that really is a custom-built statistical model that focuses on more detailed site-specific and station-specific characteristics. So combining those two tools is what the project has been doing, and allows us to look both at broader regional travel patterns, but then also individual station area characteristics, and understand how those combined might come together to allow us to better understand travel patterns. Next slide. There's a few different considerations that models often look at, and we want to make sure that we're paying attention to in a project such as this. So without going into all of the detail on these, we do want to look at broader regional factors, such as kind of how people travel between counties, like the Bay Area and elsewhere in the Monterey Bay area. But then we also look at other things, such as like commute and non-commute trips, different travel modes. I mentioned station area characteristics. We also look at things like the amount and price of parking, how that might affect travel demand and transit demand, how seasonal differences in travel activity might affect demand, and then kind of the transit system itself, how might that, as well as some of the surface transit or bus transit that connects to the rail system, might affect travel demand. So these are all factors and things that we're looking at, have been looking at, and want to make sure that we're factoring into the overall ridership process. Next slide. Quickly, a few assumptions that are detailed in the executive summary document, but these form the basis for some of the preliminary ridership forecasts that I'll be sharing today. We're assuming 30-minute service frequencies, both on weekdays and then also for weekend rail service. 9 stations throughout the corridor, running from Pajaro to Natural Bridges. We're assuming that there would be an interregional connection at Pajaro, connecting to other systems, and overall an approximately 40 to 45-minute travel time from Pajaro to Natural Bridges on the rail corridor itself. Next slide. So this gets into a little bit more detail on some of the ridership ranges that we've been developing and are looking at. We're presenting these as ranges because there's a number of factors that are still kind of being considered and could lend themselves to somewhere, kind of ridership levels being somewhere within this range at individual stations. At a high level, the total ridership per day on the system during a typical weekday, we're estimating would be around 3,500 to 6,000 riders per day. And that would then be broken down into total ridership at individual stations. Ridership levels are usually presented in terms of boardings So this would be the number of people that get on at a station, get on the train at a station throughout the day. So this is just boardings. It does that we consider lightings in the process or getting off the train, but for purposes of the numbers today, we're just focusing on boardings. You can see that the busiest station would be downtown Santa Cruz at Beach Street. That would have a range of up to 1,500 riders per day. Maybe no surprising that there's a lot of activity that occurs in and around downtown Santa Cruz, and the boardwalk area also has some bus service that currently connects to UC Santa Cruz and could even be further enhanced in the future. So there's a lot of ridership potential in downtown Santa Cruz, and the results that we've developed so far show some of that potential. Without going into all of the stations, we see maybe a few other highlights. Downtown Watsonville also has substantial ridership numbers. Some of that is driven by the recently approved Downtown Watsonville specific plan, which envisions a fair amount of new development in the downtown area, and particular new housing. So that contributes to some of the overall ridership levels in the system. When we look at Capitola and Aptos and some of the kind of 17th Avenue Seabright station, and we see kind of moderate levels of ridership activity for all of those stations as well. And then Natural Bridges has maybe ridership at the lower level, though we're also noting that there's high ridership potential if bus connections that currently are in the area could provide maybe more direct or higher speed transit service to UC Santa Cruz, maybe could lend themselves to higher ridership levels at Natural Bridges. Weekend ridership we're showing is just kind of a low, medium, high scale, which you might have seen in previous presentations. So we're focusing currently on weekday ridership, but also wanting to recognize that weekend ridership is a large component of the potential here. And so these are some of the results that we're seeing. Capitola and downtown Santa Cruz have high weekend ridership potential. Next slide. This is just a different way of showing the ridership results. So you can see it shown on a map, and the size of the circle is the overall ridership range. And so Beach Street, downtown Santa Cruz, you can see the highest level ridership potential there. And then some of the other stations kind of along the corridor over to Paja Road. Next slide. So we thought it would also be useful to look at how other systems might compare to Santa Cruz in terms of the total daily boardings, the ridership levels that we're seeing, and then maybe if we compare it on a per station basis. So this shows 3 other systems. So the SMART commuter rail system in the North Bay Area, Sonoma and Marin counties, and then 2 systems in San Diego County that we've also used as comparison systems. The Coaster Service, which goes up and down the San Diego coastline, connecting to downtown San Diego, and then the Sprinter Service, which runs inland in North San Diego County and runs between Oceanside and Escondido and several points in between. So those systems, you can see in dark green, we're showing the current ridership levels compared to our midpoint of ridership for Santa Cruz. And we see like a couple systems, SMART and the Coaster, being a little lower, Sprinter being a little bit higher, just looking at their existing ridership compared to our future ridership. And then if we account for some potential future growth of those systems, we're just for comparison purposes, we're saying, well, what if there's 50% additional growth in those systems over the next 20 years? The light green part of the bar just accounts for some of that growth potential that those other systems would likely or may have, and allows a little bit better apples to apples comparison. And then that shows if we look at the right chart, the daily ridership per station or on a per station basis, we're looking higher than most of the other systems based on their current ridership, and then higher than SMART and Coaster, even accounting for future ridership growth at those stations. Next slide. So we can also look at this on a per capita basis. This is just accounting for the total population within these areas. So we're looking at the total population within Santa Cruz County. If we just say total ridership on a per capita basis, compare that to some of the other systems, showing that the ZEPRT system would have a larger share of total transit use within Santa Cruz County compared to maybe some of these other systems. Though with the caveat that we do have some larger population centers in some of these other areas that change some of the per capita numbers. The Coaster service in particular connects to downtown San Diego, very large population center. So if you kind of look at it on a per capita basis, that system shows up as being a little bit lower than some of the other systems. But another useful way of comparing some of the ridership numbers. Next slide. So there's a few maps that we thought would also be useful to look at how growth might occur in the corridor and some of the population and employment changes that are contributing to some of the ridership numbers that we're seeing. So this map shows population and employment growth within different zones within Santa Cruz County. These zones are used in the travel model as part of the modeling process, but we can also map them and see in pink, we see the population growth, and then in blue, we see employment growth. And you can see how that's distributed throughout the county or anticipated to change throughout the county. Lots of growth in housing in downtown Watsonville, as I mentioned, as one example. Next slide. We can also look at that on a density basis. So if we take growth on and average it on a per square mile basis, we can combine that. You sort of see the gradations in color here. If we look at population and employment together, and we see some of the darker purple colors is high population and employment densities. And then some of the other colors, maybe it's just high population, but not employment, or high employment and not population. Just another way of looking at sort of the overall density of development along the corridor. We have fairly moderate to even high levels of in population, combined population and employment density, and that's beneficial oftentimes for transit demand. So that's helping kind of contribute to some of our ridership numbers here. Next slide. Also want to briefly talk about Pajaro and the interregional connection. And we're assuming that maybe about 10% of the riders would transfer or connect at Pajaro to perhaps other systems, which are shown here in the state rail plan, or maybe get on at Pajaro and then go to other locations within Santa Cruz County. The state rail plan, like I mentioned, does have a goal to connect to other systems, both to the north in Gilroy and Bay Area, and even future high-speed rail service. And then to the south in Castroville and Monterey. We're anticipating that most of the demand for transfers would probably be to and from the north, but that there would be some potential to and from the south as well. Next slide. Station access improvements also have an effect on overall ridership. And we're noting and through the process that connectivity to other modes and accessibility, those are all important factors in contributing to how many people might use or ride the train at individual stations. And so those are another thing that is being considered as part of the direct ridership component to the forecasting process. Next slide. There's a few strategies that might be considered as part of as the designs and concepts for individual stations are considered. As part of the draft ridership results that we're seeing now, we've noted maybe some of the potential types of improvements that could be considered. that would allow us to achieve maybe some of the higher ridership levels toward the higher end of the ranges that we're presenting today. So for example, those might include timed transfers to other transit systems or be they bus or other rail systems like in Pajaro. It might include park and ride lots or opportunities for people to drive or maybe get dropped off at a station and then get on at the station. It might include things like bike parking, pedestrian access improvements, maybe more direct connections to certain locations. One example might be a more direct connection to Cabrillo College from the Cabrillo State Beach Station to get across Highway 1 and allow that to be Cabrillo College to be within a much closer walking or biking distance of the station. So these are some of the potential strategies that we might consider and allow us to achieve some of the higher end of the ridership levels here. Next slide. Wanted to briefly highlight UC Santa Cruz and maybe some opportunities to think about for the connection to UC Santa Cruz. There's a lot of transit use at UC Santa Cruz today. A lot of potential for ZEPRT to contribute and be a part of that overall transportation connection. There's maybe a couple options for thinking about the connection to UC Santa Cruz. One could be a connection via Natural Bridges Station, like I mentioned earlier. So if you're getting from downtown Santa Cruz and Beach Street area to UC Santa Cruz, you could ride the train out to Natural Bridges, then get on a bus and go up to campus. That travel time might be a little longer than, say, a direct bus connection from downtown Santa Cruz, like exists today and like could maybe be enhanced in the future. But we still see kind of potential ranges or things to consider for how you might get to UC Santa Cruz to and from the ZEPRT rail system. So we've shown just a couple different options here and the approximate travel time ranges that might go along with them. Next slide. So to wrap things up, next steps. We plan to refine these results based on some of the station assumptions, like I mentioned, maybe further refinements to the overall rail service assumptions and operating plan levels, and based on kind of other factors that we might be thinking about that contribute to ridership. This will all go into a ridership report that's under development, and we'll outline and describe a lot of the things that I'm going over today. And to the extent it might be necessary, maybe future updates or refinements to the process, to the extent the project description might change or evolve over time. But at least for kind of where we're at in the process today, these are our preliminary ridership results that we're excited to be sharing with you. So with that, I will stop and turn things over to the next part of the session.